good evening, this is Hound Dog Steve, wishing you a very pleasant evening. And it seems that we have struck a deal for Brexit. But you know, when I see pictures of Boris Johnson shaking hands with Jean Claude Junker, the hairs on the back of my neck start to stand up, because these negotiators, you got to count your fingers. They are hard negotiators, and they know that essentially they have Britain behind the 8 ball. So it will be very interesting to see whether this is an actual deal or an appeasement or something just to get it through. Apparently there are changes to the Theresa May deal, and Britain will gain its independence. There are some restrictions, I understand, to Britain having to uphold EU standards, which could be an issue, but by and large Britain will be free to cut deals with whoever they want to, and will act as an independent sovereign nation. And even the Northern Ireland situation, the backstop has been solved as far as the EU is concerned. And of course, why wouldn't it? Because it was their original suggestion, and that is that Northern Ireland become a self-contained part of the EU and would just carry on as normal. But now, you know, the DUP, the Democratic Union Party of Ireland, they don't like the deal. They're the governing party, and they're also the government that, or the party that's propping up the Conservative government now, and giving Boris Johnson a very, very, very slim majority. I think it's only 1 or 2 people in his majority. And so here we are. This is what I call whack-a-mole politics, and it's unbelievable. It is so destructive to the political process. Is that, you know, we spent ages. They got the DUP on board. It seemed to be going okay. EU was the problem. Solve the problems with the EU. Now the DUP doesn't want to go along with the deal. And I'm sure that Boris Johnson is frantically trying to make deals with people to see who's going to vote which way or the other. And, you know, maybe the expelled MPs, you know, if they will vote for it, they may be invited back into the fold. Who knows what's going to happen to get this deal passed. But, and of course it could be just a ploy. You know, it could be that Boris Johnson is hoping that everyone will just waffle through the 31st of October, and the default position will click into place. You know, Article 50 has been triggered, and that date is the final date, regardless of whether they have a deal or not, regardless of what the British Parliament has discussed or not. As soon as they pass through the extension date of October the 31st, Brexit without a deal will happen. And so it will be voted on Saturday. It'll be very interesting to see the result of this vote, and whether Boris Johnson will represent the deal, because I suspect he doesn't have enough time now to go back to the EU and start renegotiating specific parts of that deal. I, for one, think the Irish backstop deal that has been come up with is excellent. The DUP is concerned with problems with Southern Ireland, but you know, most things in today's world, we are so transnational in the way we do business and the way we discuss things and negotiate contracts. I'm sure that there is some kind of arrangement that can be come up with with Southern Ireland that will maintain the status quo, which has been incredibly peaceful and a prosperous time since, as we call, the Troubles in Ireland have stopped. Now, there are issues in Northern Ireland, economic issues and that kind of stuff, but I don't want to get into that right now. We're talking Brexit and the Brexit deal. And anyway, let's flip over to these stories that I found just very briefly, and then I'll come back and do a quick wrap-up. Okie dokie, here we go. From NPR, Britain's Boris Johnson hails new Brexit deal with EU as deadline looms. British Prime Minister Boris Johnson says he's reached an agreement with the European Union on a new Brexit deal that would allow the EU to continue collecting value-added tax from Northern Ireland and allow special treatment for certain goods going over the Irish border. Johnson hailed the new deal that takes back control, and European Commission President Jean Claude Junker called it a fair and balanced agreement. With the deal in hand, Juncker said there is no need for any kind of prolongation, referring to the potential for delays or postponements that had been raised after the two sides failed to make headway in recent weeks. Johnson's government faces an October the 31st deadline for Brexit. If an agreement isn't in place by then, Johnson will be forced to ask the EU for an extension to avoid the economic perils that a no-deal Brexit could bring. But Boris Johnson has said that he would not ask for an extension, and the EU said they would not give an extension. Johnson and Junker held a cordial news conference about the deal Thursday, but its reception amongst Johnson's critics in the UK was less warm, and their responses could foreshadow the slim chances of the agreement making its way through Parliament. Johnson's Conservative Party does not have a majority in the House of Commons. I'm sorry, that was my mistake. I said they had a slim majority, but they do not have a majority. From what we know, it seems the Prime Minister has negotiated an even worse deal than Theresa May's, which was overwhelmingly rejected, said Jeremy Corbyn, the leader of the opposition Labour Party, referring to Johnson's predecessor as Prime Minister. This sellout deal won't bring the country together and should be rejected, Corbyn said. There you go. This is what I call whack-a-mole politics. This item from Russia Today, closing the Brexit curtains. It's either Boris's deal or no deal. Boris Johnson's Brexit deal is the best yet for the UK, but it's still a bad deal. Politicians on all sides are heading towards the biggest EU showdown of the century on Saturday, and they've got some tough thinking to do. I always believe that it's best to read what you're talking about first and then comment upon it afterwards. Politicians quite often do the opposite, like when Jeremy Corbyn famously didn't even bother to read Theresa May's deal before commenting on it. Having read Johnson's deal, both the withdrawal agreement and the new political declaration that goes with it, I'm a little stuck, and I'm not the only one. For all the insistence from the European Union and many UK opposition politicians that there would be no meaningful changes to the deal, the Prime Minister has clearly negotiated a substantially different deal with the EU. This is, from a Brexiteer's perspective, a bad deal, but unlike May's deal, it's not an absolute disaster. It allows the UK to chart a different course to the EU if we so desire. Brexiteers should at the very least consider this to be better than remaining in the EU and recognise that it's more than May managed to achieve when she was Prime Minister. It's a Jekyll and Hyde Brexit deal. Unlike May's, which was only Hyde, there are still concerns over the future trading relationship, but phrases like continued regulatory alignment, which would force the UK to continue to legislate in line with new EU laws, are conspicuous in their absence. The wording on fisheries is deliberately vague. It could mean almost anything. Parts of the political declaration require the UK and the EU to consider and explore all kinds of things, from the EU space programme to carbon trading schemes and EU defence policies. But there's no obligation for us to actually sign on the dotted line. The UK can ignore any and all of that if it wishes. More importantly, the backstop, which could have kept us tied to the EU in perpetuity, has been replaced. The negatives still persist. There are worrying provisions requiring cooperation on state aid and public procurement rules. The text suggests that the EU probably won't allow a long-term trading arrangement that allows the UK to deregulate and improve our own competitiveness. And as ever, there's Northern Ireland. Scrapping the backstop has seen other customs provisions put in its place, which might require some goods to be checked when they cross the Irish Sea. No wonder the DUP is not, at least yet, prepared to vote for it. So this is really one of the big issues, I think, of our time. I think it is why government is failing. And we've seen this played out so excellently over the last 3 years with Brexit, but I'm seeing it in absolutely every level of government, and that is this inability to move quickly. I mean, to even speed up. I mean, the government's pace of business is glacial as it is. And, even getting them to speed up, to walking pace is just an absolute chore. It is committee after committee after committee. Decisions can't be made. Nobody wants to take responsibility. There's liability involved. There's risk involved. It's just absolutely insane. And that's why I call it whack-a-mole politics. As you whack one mole down, 5 more pop up on the other side that have to be dealt with. And you get those dealt with, and there's 6 more on this side. And so you just cannot win. And this is bogging down the whole decision-making process. And so we need to speed that up somehow. I think that direct democracy is a way that we could do that, because there are two issues at hand here. We need public responsibility for our actions, and we need government to slim down and to be functioning in a much more efficient manner that responds to actually what it is designed to do. The government has become involved in so many things that it shouldn't even be going near. The government's real job is to caretake and manage the country in which you live. In other words, maintain an infrastructure, water, sewer, road systems, this kind of stuff. Ensure that trading regulations are fair and that are followed, and to basically weed out unfairness. One of the things that's happening right now, which is a great problem, is that all of the rules and regulations that are being made by these committees and bodies are basically only affordable by large corporations. Small mom-and-pop operations cannot afford to live up to the obligations in the regulations, and I know this myself, from running my own business. The health regulations are just you spend the entire day dealing with health regulations instead of actually doing your business, and this is not good. It hampers business. Okay, and I'm not saying that you should have every hairdresser unlicensed and operating out of their basement and no health regulations at all. No, that's not, of course, what I'm saying. But what I'm saying is the rules and regulations should not be so onerous that a single owner operation cannot function effectively and create a living for themselves. Because, we are actually, the self-employed people are the backbone of any economy. You may think the corporations are the big employers, but no. It is people like myself, single owner operator businesses, who are supporting this country with our tax dollars and labours. Okay, we definitely need to start streamlining government services and how they're delivered, and stop this endless committees. There has to be a point in time when a decision is made. And when I flip back to the past, when I first came to this area, it was called Victoria County. There were 16 townships, and each township basically took care of all the infrastructure needs within that township. And decisions were made by the roads works foreman. He'd drive down the road with an orange spray bomb, and he would mark pieces of the road that were in bad condition, and we would hire a contractor to come in and fix that section of road, or if it was bad enough, we would replace the entire road. And we didn't need a committee to decide that. It was common sense. That's what we called it. We didn't have to have a committee to have common sense, and that's how we made our decisions. And you know what? For the longest time, we've had beautifully maintained services, roads and infrastructure. And now, because of awful management and because of this endless committee process, we now have an infrastructure that is falling apart, and its repair and replacement is long overdue, and governments are virtually bankrupt. So I don't know how they're going to cross this, but we can't keep on going on arguing for 3 years, costing the taxpayer money for all those resources. You have no idea of the paperwork that was printed and shredded behind the scenes to get all of this action and non-action to take place. All of the papers that had to be given to every parliamentary member and then shredded afterwards because of privacy issues and so on and so forth. Absolutely staggering. The civil service has just loved it all and lapped it up, and it's been on your dime. Okay, so just remember that when you're voting, that's why you don't want the kind of governments in place that love bureaucracies. You want governments in place that think bureaucracy have their place but should stay in their place. Okay, well, if you enjoyed this video, please like, comment and subscribe below. And in the meantime, this is Hound Dog Steve signing off, wishing you a very pleasant evening, and we'll talk to you very, very shortly. See you now. Bye. Oh, we'll be coming back on Saturday, I hope, after the vote, because I am anxious to see how Parliament votes on this Brexit deal. See ya.